Greetings. Now, some of you wonder why I always start by saying greetings. A lot of people will say good morning, but when you think that a morning follows a wake, and when you start looking at particularly the English language and any of the other alphabetical languages, there is a very good reason to be careful with what words we use, because they do have alternative meanings. But funny little story here. It's now 7:30 in the morning. I actually got up just to use the toilet, and usual thing, I'm not going to get a let up in this information that is just sort of coming from somewhere. So I thought it's time to make a video. I've got sufficient information all up here to do it with. When I say information, I'm not talking about specific details. I'm going to I write my own scripts, and I'm not just talking about the videos. I'm talking about daily life here. I write my own scripts, and I shape the world around me in my immediate vicinity. So I'm my own producer, my own director. I'm the star on my own world stage. So I thought, might as well start painting the back scenes. So when you look at the way life is, there's a pattern that emerges very quickly. And I've got to say a big shout out and a big thank you to channels like Jon Levi, NewEarth, and Flat Earth British in particular. That's just off the top of my head that I can think of, who are looking at a very different history from what we're told. As Martin at Flat Earth British would say, today is the 28th of June 2019, so they say. Well, exactly, we don't really know what the time scale is. Now, what I will say generally is the devil is in the detail. You can go down and look at one specific location, and you can spend a lifetime just studying that. If you want a very good quick overview, I'm going to recommend Jon Levi. Now, one in particular is San Francisco, a population of 1,000 in 1848. Within 2 years, it's suddenly grown to 25,000. And then if you look at the photographs that he shows, the panoramic photograph we're talking now about 1872, you've got a highly organised grid system of streets, which does not imply a gold rush and that haphazard ground plan that you would get in that sort of situation. Then we get to 1906, there's an earthquake, we're told, and then by 1915 there's a world fair and exhibition, and these temporary buildings that look more than, shall we say, temporary, and beautiful architecture, which of course then has to be destroyed again. And you start to wonder about, well, hold on a minute, none of this is starting to make any sense. Then you look at the old maps and you find details and evidence of places, particularly in North America. There's a whole history there that is being covered up for some reason. Now, the pattern always seems to be the same. You see, there seems to be a macrocosm and a microcosm. And what is actually the microcosm is being told to us as the macrocosm. I'll give you one example of this that readily comes to mind. What is a son of God? Why are some people looking for a singular being when it is quite obvious we all have a Christ consciousness within inside ourselves? And it's not a case of letting something in, it's a case of letting something out. I will go further than this, and I will say that the original source what people will call God, or any other name you want to, or any other label you want to apply to it, is actually a child. Which I think is why it is important that we do not lose the inner child within us, because if you've lost the child, what are you? Adult. It's simple as that with the words. You can look at this in words are very revealing. But history itself, it seems to be twisted and perverted and something that was big. Now again, what are the fallen angels? Well, if you're falling for an angle, like a religious view of creation or the Darwinist view of evolution, because that's in reverse. They're making monkeys out of all of us by believing all this crap that they're telling us. It's the opposite way round. And again, Adolf Hitler. What do we really know about him? Because the evidence that I can see paints a very different picture. Dunkirk, for example, in 1940 has been spun as some sort of victory. It wasn't, it was a defeat. The British Expeditionary Force had been pushed back to the coast. Then I find out that apparently Hitler gave orders to hold back for 3 days to allow this evacuation. That doesn't actually seem the tactics of someone who's a madman who hates every other country in Europe. If anything, he writes in Mein Kampf about how he admires the British. Then you see some of the other things that goes on. Why delay something that would give you a huge advancer with a fighter interceptor jet, and it has to have bomb carrying capability? So back to the drawing board, a delay in production to get it into the war. Now the V2 rocket. Why is it launched on civilian targets in London and not launched on military factories that your conventional forces cannot reach in the east? That would have turned the situation around, and you'll see the same pattern over and over again. Adolf Hitler has interfered in the progress of the military machine and actually slowed things down. And you start wondering why. And then the tactical thing of why turn on Russia when you have a pact with the country. So you're now fighting a war on two fronts. Obviously, there is more to that one because it has been confirmed by Russian generals and German generals in newspapers that Stalin just needed 1 more year to build up sufficient forces to sweep across all of Europe. So it looks like there was a plan B there, because they're all different faces of the same coin. Stalin, Hitler, Churchill, Roosevelt. Then you've got the false flag with Pearl Harbor. False flags are nothing new. They've been going on for centuries. It's just the term false flag has been brought about as a recent way, same as the term conspiracy theorist. It's been brought about as a way of ridicule, and you'll find that is always the first tactic on anybody. We'll make them look stupid. We'll make them look like they're idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. Because the general reaction from most people is one of, oh, that sounds ridiculous, because they are so used to being told this official narrative and seem to have lost the ability to actually question anything. But the only question that is a stupid question is the one that you don't ask. And why don't you ask that question? It's because you're fearful of what other people will think of you for asking that question. It's like, where is the edge of the earth? If you mention flat earth, those that don't believe in it will, for some reason, they definitely go off the edge. We are very much limited by our imagination. What your mind will accept. There is always a metaphorical to all these things. Now, what about all these gods and goddesses? What exactly are they? Because again, the stories seem to be so twisted between reality and fiction and legend and myth. But there seems to be a play out. We are mind, body, and soul, and there seems to be the equivalent in each layer of that. So, whilst there may well be flesh and blood beings, which I would say were technically more advanced, to which this legendary status has been applied, there seems to be a spiritual play out to this as well, and things changing very soon. Now, what is also very interesting is you had the film Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's this machine that's come back from the future. And it starts with a company called Cyberdyne Systems. Well, funny enough, there is a Cyberdyne System company that I believe does specialise in robotics today. But what's even more interesting is when you understand that Kyle Reese is an anagram of a like seer, because he is from the future, so he does see a future. He is a seer. So what does that make Sarah Connor? Well, it is a con of Ra, because you'll find it's always Ra and El, these two gods. They're like two brothers who are jealous of each other, like two toddlers. But the con of Ra is on the Sarah. So what is Sarah? Well, your cerebrum, Sarah, your Sarah Abraham, that is the divine feminine. So you've got your like seer, who has unconditional love, who travels across time backwards to a world that is very different from a world he knows. He's never seen greenery, he's never seen trees, he doesn't know anybody in this world. It's very strange to him. But he's left all that aside and he's come back out of love to save this Sarah Connor. That is the underlying meaning with that, particularly with that character. Now, Sarah Connor, look what she starts off as, this hopeless waitress who can't even, as she says, balance a checkbook, to becoming this great leader. That is the divine feminine being brought out from the physical body to the fore, your true self coming out. And I think we're for some very interesting times ahead. When you think about eyesight, it is said if you have perfect eyesight, if you go to the opticians, they write it down as 6+, 6+, 6+, which is an odd number in itself. But then you're also said, if you have perfect eyesight, to have 20/20 vision. I can't help thinking what next year is as well. Will something be clearly revealed, as is suggested in Revelations? These are all interesting things to think about, but I will say, look at some of this. Some of you may be captivated into looking deeply at a specific thing, but it's when we put all this on the table, we start seeing something very different from what we've been told. And I would say this starts with the severing of the umbilical cord, setting up psychologically a sense of loss with your past, a cut of all ties. As much as physically, that is a metaphorical severing with the past. And how many of you feel like you don't belong here, or you're wondering, where are we from, what are we, and where are we going? Collectively, I think we can answer that, and as I've said, I think this original source is a child. Because like in spirituality, we learn best when we go into darkness and go through dark times in our lives. Because if you're in a completely blackened room, you will find the tiniest speck of light a lot easier than if you are in bright sunshine. So let's apply that to this original source. If it is a child, where is that going to learn best? And from what type of experiences? Obviously, it is going to have to learn both sides. So there needs to be some good to balance the bad, the yin and the yang every time. To me, that makes perfect sense. It is, well, I've used this as I've tried to explain this to people, and I think you'll all agree with this. We are three in one because we are all observers. We are all students because we don't know everything. But we're also teachers because we pass on our experiences. And that, again, is another thing that you cannot get any other way except through going through experiences. You learn through experiences. You can't read about an experience. You might have a general understanding of it, but until you go through it, you have no real understanding of it. This is the same as if somebody who has depression is told by someone who doesn't understand it, says, "Oh, cheer up, pull yourself together." Probably the most aggravating saying that could ever be said to someone who is going through anxiety or depression, because if it was that easy, don't you think they would actually be doing that? But it's amazing, this, as I said before, this paradox. You have this information technology, but it seems to come with a built-in loss of the ability to ask the questions, to actually put into this tool that you can use to find things out. Now, there's no guarantee that that information is going to be right. I would say do comparative studies across, just let's take YouTube videos on the true history of the world. Look at about 20 different ones. Don't just look at one and accept that. You're just getting one person's viewpoint on something. But certainly look at more than one. Get a balanced view and then make your mind up. Because if you can all be a Christ and you're all also an Antichrist and you are also a falling angle, that also means inside each and every one of us we have a devil. This is shown often in depictions as like a little angel and a demon on the shoulder, or Pinocchio, who has no conscience, so he's got Jiminy Cricket. Now there's a very interesting pattern there for a start. Crickets, similar to crickets, are locusts, and then by extension parasites. You've got Bug's Life, the Disney Pixar, and what a wonderful story you've got there. When one ant wakes up and realises that the locusts don't come along and take the food of the ants pick the food and keep the food for themselves. Well, what if we are the ants? Because we are participants in this world. I would even go so far to say, if I was starting a family now, I would do my damnedest to make sure those children were not registered with certificates. Because you become property of state, then that legal fiction on that birth certificate, and then your marriage certificate, and then when you're signed off with a death certificate, is not actually you. It's a legal fiction. And this is what is being shown to you in The Wizard of Oz, if you understand it. Dorothy is the door of Fee. The Fee is another name for a god, hence theology. So the gateway to unlocking the God within, you need to understand your straw man, your legal fiction. You need to find the heart for the lion. And it's no good being the Tin Man with a weapon in your hand if you've not got a well-oiled machine. This is a spiritual oil that runs up your Jacob's ladder that will release this Christ consciousness inside you. That is what it is showing you. You'll notice the yellow brick road starts as a golden spiral. You'll notice also they go to the Emerald City. I think is a reference to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Then when they get there, what are they faced with? You've got the Wizard of Oz. But the gut feeling, which is Toto, the animal instinct, knows there's something wrong with this and pulls the curtain back and reveals it's just a little man pulling a few levers, a bit like they do with politicians, religious leaders, heads of charities, and anything else official you can think of. Because if you notice, all these top positions are always appointed. Now you add into this mix, you've got a criminal justice system, which is a justice system of criminals. Because these things are always in reverse. And you can see over and over again, the actions of these organisations are not serving humanity at all. The ones that I would have thought would have been most up in arms about the loss of insect life, the loss of bird life, and now the deliberate cutting down of trees for this awful 5G kill system, are saying nothing. They're talking about plastic. Yes, very important, but distraction. Glastonbury Festival in the southwest of England that's going on currently. There's now reports coming out that the catering staff in particular are getting nosebleeds, getting migraines, and are going off sick. Well, of course they're going to be sick. They're being radiated. They're in an area which is basically a huge great microwave. Where most people don't seem to get all of this is you are dealing with a control system, a shadow world government that is already in place, a world war that is already happening behind the scenes, that most people are still not affected by it because they don't see it. But you have this war going on, and it's been going on for centuries, certainly within the 20th century. It starts with vaccinations. Oh, look, aluminium or aluminum have been found into those. You now have these straight clouds, these chemtrails, spraying you with the same metallic substances. Now you have 5G. Lovely, now we've got an ignition system for all these metal particles. So we could be microwaved. Now if you think that the three things are unrelated, then you really seriously need to look at this again. Because it's the same people or the same organisations all linked together that are behind all of these things. Why are there wars still going on in the Middle East and have been as far as probably all of us can remember? Because wars make money. War is the mechanism that generates a lot of money, along with oil, of course, these so-called fossil fuels, which are not even fossilised remains that this oil is coming from either, I can assure you that. It's coming from a different depth, but most people can say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, don't I? Do I need to be an expert? Are you going to judge me on the amount of letters I have after my name because I've gone through a schooling system? Interestingly though, what the school doesn't teach you is to behave like a school of fish when threatened by a predator. You don't all come together as one. We're compartmentalised. Same as, why is it Egyptology? Why is it not just archaeology? Because there's pyramids in other areas of the world. Why compartmentalise that into a standalone subject, separate from South America, separate from Asia, and so on? Even within the UK, the British Isles, we've got plenty of ancient evidence of things, melted rocks in Scotland. But there's a lot of things we're not being told the truth about. The Great Wall of China is another one. Why would the arrow slots be on the south side of the wall and not on the north if that was a Great Wall of China? It's interesting how all these things fit together. Then you've got your paedophiles and your rapists who are getting minimal or sentences or just walking away free. Don't forget, there are secret societies and brotherhoods, and once people are in these secret societies, they pledge an oath beyond death to that brotherhood as opposed to humanity, because it is a conflict of interests. So again, I would look in at the bigger picture to all of this, and the world that is around seems very different from the world that actually is. It's a huge difference. I know some of you out there who've started to point out these things, and then the first reaction by your own family is to ridicule it and say, oh, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And they will totally close off from it. They won't even look at it. They won't even give you a chance to hear you out. It's all a test though, because again, it's all experiences. In fact, I'll go back to say this original source only being a child. Again, it's another experience. Whatever you go through is all experiences. So it does beg the question, what is good and what is evil, really? From our perspective, something can be seen as evil. But what if you are this child that is learning and you don't have emotions that are biased one way or the other? What if you just want to see what is? That then changes everything. So it also brings into the question of the Big Bang Theory. Is it like the Darwin theory, where they're making monkeys out of us? What if the Big Bang Theory is partially right? Because these sorry about that. These script writers, they certainly know how to twist things, and certainly seem to have a total lack of imagination to come up with anything creative. Which is why you'll find all religions, and historically, women have always been treated as lesser, because at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. This tilt of the earth, this is all about restoring the divine feminine to being equal with the divine masculine. Because why are women treated as lesser? We're all born of women. So shouldn't they be held in much higher regard because they bring new life into the world? So if anything, I would say that makes women a lot more special than men, and they have got a name. We're just men. At least they've got a prefix. They are a womb man. They have a purpose to live just from their name. The divine masculine is really just a supporting role. But so many men out there are they're so vain, they have fragile egos, that you have to play this alpha male role. But look at any Western with the fastest gunslinger. There's always going to be somebody else who's going to be that bit faster. And it's not going to end well for one of you. And why are we competing against each other with that type of mentality? I think that is one of the biggest problems with this world, is this alpha male ego mentality. And it then begs in the question of these 10 commandments about thou shalt not kill. Well, surely the one thing that you should kill is this ridiculous male ego, because that is not working. I would say let's give divine feminine a chance. Let women run the world. They're a lot more compassionate than men, it seems. And I think it would be in much less of a state than it is now if we'd have gone down that route. And we still can. But unfortunately, we have a control system in place at the moment that needs to go. Because I think the original source really has learnt enough from us now. I think we've sent enough information back from these experiences. And although it might be on a different time scale to a human infant becoming a child and then becoming a teenager, it would seem logical that this original source is going to grow and develop from this learning. But it's up to us as the teachers what we teach it, as what is right and what is wrong, I think. So don't feel ridiculed because most people still don't see this. I have been shown a future, and I'm not going to say it on here at this stage because I don't want to spread fear. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you make the choice to not give in to fear, and when you see what the way things are and you think, hold on a minute, this isn't making sense, but it's like any magic trick. You're dazzled by it and bewildered by it when you don't understand it. But once you know how that trick works, it loses something of the magic. The illusion is gone. And it doesn't matter whether it's Hollywood, whether it's religion, or whether it's politics or news. It's the same thing. It's just illusion that you're being fed all the time from people who are appointed to these positions, who seem to be following an agenda. Whether it's actually physically written out or not, it doesn't matter. But the implications are it's going in a way that is not serving the best interests of not only humanity, but life itself. So, as I always say, I'm going to end that there and probably talk for another 2 minutes as I do. What have we got up to now? I can't quite see this timing on here. Oh, good grief, 31 minutes. This is probably going to be too long. So, yes, I'm ending that there. Thank you.